Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. I am going to be discussing vocabulary. I'm going to Aggressive Avarice here just to have some ammo and that sort of stuff. But I'm going to be discussing some general Destiny 2 lingo you might hear, and also what exactly subclass verbs do, and all of that good stuff. Also, I'm going to be talking about some perks, but weapon perks are going to be later. First and foremost, I am going to turn down the music just a little bit, mostly to help me concentrate, because the music is kind of bumping. Alright, so first off, we're gonna start with Arc. We're gonna start off with Arc. So first, some general Destiny 2 language. First, when anybody says ads, they mean just general enemies. Like this wizard, that's an ad. The little hive guys, ads. Ads pretty much apply to everything except bosses. So when somebody says ad clear, they want you to kill all of the enemies except for the boss. So that's what that usually means if you go into a team and they say, "Hey, we want you on ad clear." That means you're gonna just be killing things and not doing any boss damage or anything like that. And what pulling means is when somebody is in an encounter ahead of you, what'll happen if they start it was you'll get a thing called joining allies, and then you'll basically get teleported to where that person is ahead of you. That's what pulling means. That's all of the Destiny 2 language that I think I need to discuss. So, now for subclasses. Now we're going to be going to exactly what every single one does. Every class, I believe, can apply all of them, but some are better than others at doing things. This is not class specific. Now, first things first, I'm going to teach you how to do what two things mean. First, we're going to take that off. That sucks. I forgot that's going to get rid of my energy. Well, while we wait for that to return, I'll show you what Jolt means. So Jolt as a base perk says reloading this weapon after defeating a target overcharges this weapon for an improved short period of time, causing it to jolt on its next hit. Now I'm going to show you what Jolt itself means. With a perk called Volt Shot. It's the only one that Arc has. Every single other class has two perks, even Stasis. Like Strand has Slice and Hatchling. Stasis even has Chill Clip and whatever. But when we kill this enemy, reload, we have a Volt Shot which will apply Jolt to that wizard. As you can see, it's sparking. She's sparking. When I hit her, as I deal damage, it's going to kill extra enemies. So you can see it here. It chains all of them. It's essentially what Chain Lightning is, essentially. So now we're going to run on top of this building. Now, I do need a little bit of a beefier enemy. Our next Arc subclass verb is going to be Blind. Blinding. As you can see, he can't see. He can't hit me. He can't shoot me. No nothing. He's a bitch. Now Amplified. Amplified, which you can see on the left-hand side of my screen. After you sprint for a while, it'll give you something called Speed Booster. And it makes it go super fast. Go super fast. It does nothing else. Some exotics can benefit from it, but generally speaking, I can kill myself. But generally speaking, it's not useful. Now, something else I do want to mention is when people say wipe, it means just killing yourself by shooting a rocket or something at your feet. That's all that means. And that is it for Arc. Arc doesn't really have any other subclass verbs or anything like that, really. There's only Jolt, Amplified, and Blinding. I don't believe there's anything else. No, there's not. So now we're going to move on to Solar. Solar has some verbs to them. And I need a specific one to showcase all of them. No? Okay. Because for some situations, The only way Titans are able to get certain perks to activate is through certain other means. So first off, there's Scorch and Ignition. Scorch. You see those burning enemies? They are scorched currently. It's essentially a burn. So you can see it again. They're scorched. Now, if well, this one's gonna be a little bit harder to do. But ignitions are essentially a big, gigantic explosion, which are hard to do, especially with weaker enemies. They're a little more difficult. But think of it as a gigantic explosion that happens if you build up enough of those burn stacks. Now, I made it to where these give it to me, but Restoration gives you a little burst of healing, so we're going to let him hit me. And we're going to go pick this up. Bam. Burst of healing. Maybe we can get an ignition off? I don't think we're going to be able to get... There, you saw those little explosions? That's what that means. So those are those two. I just don't want to get killed in the middle of it. So that's what Scorch and Ignitions do. Incandescent is your perk for that. Cure is a burst of health. It gives you a chunk of health back. It's not something I can proc personally, but Restoration gives you a little bit of healing over. It gives you healing over time. Now Radiant, as you can see on the left-hand side of my screen, gives you extra damage. So I'm gonna make sure to get rid of Radiant. So body shot here. I should get a crit actually. No. 6298. 6298. Now at Radiant. Oh, come on. Okay, it's difficult to show. So there. Oh, sorry. Oh well. It's about a 10% damage bonus. That's what Radiant does. That's what Radiant does. Now we can just kill ourselves. Now, something I forgot to mention to Arc. Arc Blind can handle some of these subclass reps can handle champions. That's something I'm going to save for my Guardian rank series. So go check that out, because I definitely am going to do a Nightfall and explain what champions are and what they do. But for now, that's it for Solar. There are only 3 for Arc, I believe, but for this one, you have your Ignition. Remember, Scorch's burn. Ignitions, when you have enough, when an enemy is burning enough, they'll ignite. It's a little explosion. And then you have Radiant, which is just a damage bonus, and then Cure gives you a burst of healing. Restoration, on the other hand, gives you a health over time. Now, on to Void here. There are a couple of Void perks, but there's some specific stuff that we actually do need. We need this, and this, and this. Yes. And because that has demo on it, we'll just do that. Again, we'll go over weapon perks in a second. I actually do need to collect these so I can get my energy back. Golly! Oh my god! That was a curse to roll. Okay, I'm kind of getting my ass kicked. Okay, while I can chill... Okay, what we are in is currently an Overshield. I need an actual Void weapon on my person. Do I have one? I do. Now I'm going to get myself something called Volatile Rounds. Volatile Rounds do this. Give little Void explosions. As you can see. Now, next up is suppression. Never mind, I absolutely nerfed her, so... Hopefully she doesn't die when I do it to her. This one, never mind, I instantly killed it. Okay, that's fucking it. I'm putting on suppression grenades. Nope. Suppress. I can just do this. It's basically blind. It's basically blind. They can't do anything. And then they just unblind after a while. I lost my means of killing myself, though. And then, of course, we're gonna recap all of this as well when, once we're done with all of them, I'm gonna recap all of them. So, just remember, suppression is basically blind. Overshield, think of it as an extra health bar, and volatile, as you saw, is purple explosions. There are no other ones from what I remember. Oh, there's something called Devour. It's not something Titans can proc easily at all. So, Devour gives you extra grenade energy, extra melee energy, and it gives you a little bit of health as well. That's what Devour does. Now, on to Stasis. I do have a Stasis weapon, thankfully, but I'm actually going to use Wicked Implement for this. Now, for Stasis, there's really only two. There's Freeze and Slow. There's really only two. There's Freeze and Slow. Eventually, they have said they're going to be adding Frost Armor, but that's not in the game yet. So that's what Shattering a Stasis Crystal does. I actually don't have the names for it. That's what a slowed enemy looks like. It's literally they're slowed. So we can make her an example here. Stop moving around so much. Is she slowed? You can see her moving slowly. And that's frozen. But those are the only two verbs for Stasis specifically. I don't have any heavy ammo, so... Alright. Well, they kill us here. We're going to swap over to Strand, and I'm going to show you y'all Strand. First and foremost, Stasis is locked behind Beyond Light, and Strand is locked behind Lightfall. So keep that in mind as we talk about these. And we're going to get up here. Do I have... No, I don't, unfortunately. Is there any other way I can... Oh, actually... So we're going to put on this grenade so I can show you what Suspend looks like. The only other ones that you really need to know are what Woven Mail looks like, what Tangles look like. And Unraveling Rounds aren't super important. I think of them as little bullets. They are essentially little bullets that help you destroy things. Then another one. There was one more. There's one more. There was one more. I was pretty sure there was one more. Severing a target essentially lessens their damage. That's not something that you're going to be able to see, but that's something that it's able to do. Now, I have Pugless on this weapon. For melee energy gains. This is a Threadling. Throwing us out of ourselves, give us a buff called Woven Mail. But also, it gives us something, so that's that green thing that's around our arms. That is also, please don't kill all of them. It just killed all of them. Great. Please don't kill. God damn! I might actually have to go into a harder activity in order to show what, There, that's a suspended. They are suspended, they cannot attack. And I don't think I have a weapon in my inventory which I can get. No, I don't, unfortunately. I unfortunately can't exactly show what threatlings look like, because I don't have a weapon that can do that, unfortunately. But that's Woven Mail is a damage resist. As you saw, Suspend just kind of holds him in the air. We're not going to die by that debuff. So that's Strand. And of course, we're going to go back through. I can explain all the subclass stuff again. So, just for a little recap, we're going to start with the... we're going to start with Strand. Strand is locked behind Lightfall. Remember, Suspend lifts the target in the air. They can't attack. In PvP, it lifts you and slows you down, and it makes it slower for that person to move. Woven Mail is damage resistance. It basically makes you take less damage for as long as you have it. Unraveling Rounds, think of it as little micro missiles that, hit the target as well. Sever, if you can apply it, lessens that target's damage. So if you sever a boss, that one is kind of complicated to proc, and I don't know anyone that uses it. So that's that. And it just lessens how much damage that enemy outputs. For stasis, there's only two. That's slow and freeze. And slow, slows them down, and freezes them in place. So there's that's it for those two classes. Now for Arc, remember blinding, enemies can't attack you if you have blinded them. And for Jolt, remember when you shoot an enemy, you reload, and well that's for Volt Shot, but when you proc Jolt, jolting a target chains lightning to other targets, and if you jolt a big boy, when you shoot that big boy, the mini boss or whatever, they will send out electric shocks to enemies surrounding them. And Amplified doesn't do anything on its own, but when you sprint, you get a buff called Speed Booster, which boosts your sprint. Amplified does nothing else. Some things tie into Amplified though, so do keep that in mind. And for Void, Overshield is a second health bar. Think of it like that. Suppression is exactly the same as Blind. It does something different in PvP though. Keep that in mind. For Blind, PvP, it basically makes the other person's screen white for a little while. And Suppression in PvP it takes away their ability to use abilities. They act exactly the same though in PvE. PvE means player versus everyone, and which is anything else other than Crucible and Gambit. PvP obviously means player versus player. Now, other than that, you have volatile rounds, which, as you saw, if you let your weapons get volatile rounds, void explosions all over the place. And then Devour, which I can't do nearly as well as a Titan. It gives you extra melee. It buffs your melee regeneration, your grenade regeneration, and it regens your health a little bit as well. Also, I don't know why I keep getting the same fire team advice from this person, but PS4 is bugged right now. So even if I join them, their voice chat wouldn't work, and their texting wouldn't quite work either. Now, Solar, Radiant buffs your damage. This is not something you need to worry about as a Titan, but on Warlock, that's a little bit different. Now, Scorch is basically burn. You are burning the target. And then Ignition is once you've applied enough burn to that target / Scorch, it explodes them. It makes them explode. It's easier to show on bosses, but the enemies here are a little bit too weak. And then, of course, you have Restoration, which is healing over time for a certain period of time, and Cure is a burst of health. So that's it for subclasses. Now, some perks to think about. Now, if you are a melee person, if you love... I'm trying to avoid sentences that sound sus. If you like meleeing, if you like fisting, then your perk choice is going to be Pugilist. Well, sorry, I call it Pugilist, but it's Pugilist and Swashbuckler. These are really the two perks you're going to look for on primary ammo weapons. Those are going to be your god perks for primary ammo weapons are Pugilist and Swashbuckler. If you love grenades, if you love just lobbing grenades, your biggest perk is going to be this one, Demolitionist. That is going to be your big perk you're going to want to look for on weapons. The other one you can have is something called Adrenaline Junkie. I don't think I actually have this perk on any weapon that I use. No, I don't think I have it on anything. So, that's that if you love grenades. If you have Thresh on a weapon, don't use it. That's essentially that. The only other perks that you really should be looking out for is on special ammo weapons, you should be looking for a perk called Vorpal Weapon for boss damage. Vorpal Weapon helps massively. Could you fucking stop that shit, please? For heavy weapons, not necessarily Vorpal Weapon, but you want, if you want something like Focus Fury, which shooting multiple, which Focus Fury, after you dump once you get halfway down the magazine, if you've hit only precision shots, it will buff your damage by a lot. Pugilist will give you extra grenade, it will give you extra melee energy, so you can melee more often, and meleeing will increase that weapon's damage. And Demolitionist, getting kills with Demolitionist will give you grenade energy. And Adrenaline Junkie, if you get kills with a grenade, it increases that weapon's damage. So they work hand in hand here. Vorpal Weapon is still good on heavy weapons. But other than that, the really things you should be like the perks that are subclass based. For stasis, there's Headstone, which getting a headshot will make a stasis crystal spawn there. It's not particularly useful. There's another one called Chill Clip, which is only on fusion rifles, I believe. Correct me in the comments below, but I believe it's only on fusion rifles. Getting shots with that will slow that target down, and if you shoot them enough with Chill Clip, it will only happen for the top part of the magazine. But when you get those shots, it can freeze them if you land enough of them. That's for stasis. For strand, Hatchling and Sever are the only two strand perks. Hatchling getting kills will spawn a little Threatling, which is a little seeking ground missile essentially. And then there's Slice. I have never used Slice, and I don't have a single weapon with Slice on it. So somebody in the comments, let me know what Slice actually does. I believe it applies Sever, but I don't quite know because I don't use Sever. I don't use Slice as a perk. But usually every subclass almost has about two perks for their subclass. Stasis, you have Chill Clip and Headstone. For Strand, you have Sever and Hatchling. And then for Solar, you have Incandescent, which, how do I think about this? Essentially, think about it as explosions galore. Fire explosions galore. If you want lots of fire explosions, using a weapon with Incandescent on it. Heal Clip basically means like when you get a kill, you reload, you basically heal, you give everybody, including yourself, a chunk of health. It heals you the most, but it does heal other people that are near you. Now, for those are the two perks for Solar. For Arc, there is only one, I believe, and that is Volt Shot. Volt Shot is what I was using earlier to proc Jolt. You get a kill, then you reload the weapon, then your next shot is going to do that chain lightning stuff, which is extremely nice. And that's the only perk for Arc. I don't believe there's another one. Arc is kind of, in my opinion especially, like, Arc has been kind of neglected because Arc is the only one that doesn't have two perks that apply to its subclass. And then the last one, I do have to come over here to show you a weapon that actually has it. But the two void ones are Destabilizing Rounds and Repulsor Sprays. Repulsor Sprays gives you an overshield when you get kills with void debuffs. Essentially, for hunters, whenever you use your void melee, that's the little smoke bomb, getting a kill while that enemy is, I forgot about a verb, but it's weaken. What weaken does is Titans can't apply it, that's why I forgot about it. At least we can't apply it very well. But Weaken essentially makes that enemy take more damage. Weaken lets the enemy take more damage. Now, Repulsor's Brace, if you kill an enemy that's weakened, you can get an overshield. Which is good with destabilizing rounds. Destabilizing round is essentially your weapon is permanently volatile. You basically void explosions galore. That is basically what destabilizing rounds is. And volatile does count as a debuff. I will go through here in a second and explain what are buffs and what are debuffs. But these two match perfectly together. However, on most weapons, you don't actually want to go for something else. But on this shotgun, with an exotic that I have paired with this shotgun, it's extremely good. And it's the only way to run a triple shotgun setup from what I've experienced. So those are all of the perks you kind of want to look out for, especially, once you figured out what subclass you prefer to use and all that jazz. Now, buffs and debuffs. Strand only has one buff, and that is Woven Mail. That is a damage resist. Sever is a debuff, it weakens the other enemy. Buffs are things that help you. Think of it as this. Buffs are stuff that helps you as a guardian, and debuffs are what negatively impact an enemy. Things like Unraveling Rounds aren't necessarily a debuff. Now for Stasis, slow and freeze are both debuffs on another enemy. You can't apply slow or freeze to yourself, unless there's some random ass glitch. Now for Void, suppression is a debuff. You are essentially blinding the other enemy. Overshield is a buff. And also, technically speaking, volatile rounds are counted as a debuff. Even though, in my opinion, they don't really act debuff-alike, but they are counted in the game as a debuff. Same with Weaken as well. You're making that enemy take more damage from you. So, Weaken, volatile rounds are both, and suppression are, all three of them are counted as debuffs. Overshield is the buff. For Arc, Blind is counted as a debuff because you are blinding that enemy. Jolt would also be considered as a debuff as well because it is impacting the other enemy. Amplified is neutral because it doesn't benefit you in any way, but Speed Booster is technically a buff because it is impacting you as a player. Now, Solar. Restoration, Cure, and Radiant are all buffs to you. They impact you. The only debuffs are Scorch and Ignition because they cannot apply to you, they apply to an enemy. So that is something of note there. But that is kind of it for all the subclass stuff. Those are almost all of the terms that you kind of need to know as a Destiny 2 player. I hope that helps in terms of what stacks and what does not stack. I can't help with that. I am not as experienced with how exactly buffs and debuffs work, especially when it comes in terms of how weapons interact with subclasses and that sort of stuff. So, go to your local Datto for for that stuff. But generally speaking, as long as you pick a subclass that you really like using, you really like melee, focus on Pugilist and Swashbuckler, along with other perks that your subclass is helped by. And, if you like using grenades on your favorite subclass, then you can focus on Demolitionist. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going for Adrenaline Junkie. You should probably go with, Demolitionist and whatever, a perk that your subclass has. Like Incandescent for Solar. I think that's all. Let me know in the comments below what y'all think, and this should help for the Guardian Rank 5 video. Hopefully you have watched this beforehand, because I just blazed straight through all of it. But hopefully this video helps, and on that note, I will catch y'all on the flip side.